We will be going over this amazing presentation today. And if you can give me a second slide, we will be going into few things related to scam. We will be going over the scam to watch out for in 2024. How to spot a scammer and how to avoid the scam. And last but not least today, we will be going over what to do in the event you fall victim to a scam. We will have approximately 50 minutes on this presentation, and we will have 10 minutes to go over with the Q&A at the end. And in the meantime, as Eddie alluded to in the beginning, if you have any questions, please use the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we will go over and answer those. In the event we cannot answer because of the timing, we will be following up with you later on with your answer. And identity theft scam continue to be prevalent with rise of technology and artificial intelligence. And it's important for us to be able to be ahead or be aware of what is trending right now in this particular year and further up in years to come. And be mindful to be able to kind of predict and mitigate those risks as well. So next slide. And the first one that is trending for this year is the deep fake identity theft. And this one is right now I call it the hot topic of for the social media. Deep fake identity theft is where scammers manipulate identities online using artificial intelligence. And sometimes you will receive a phone call from an unknown number, maybe a random number, and the person is not telling, you cannot hear the person, but you tend to, when you pick up the phone, you always, the majority of the time, say hello, who is calling. And when you are doing those exercises by phone, right, your voice, they are mining your voice and gather your voice to be able to manipulate and actually going and utilize that, create a false identity with that voice to be able to personalize and actually falsify, like going into the identification and go and call back, utilizing that voice from you and manipulate it to actually put some script on it. And they can perform in very sophisticated technology to actually have your photo from your social media, and actually with that piece of voice that they recorded from you when you pick up the phone, they can recreate the whole script to be able to add fake like videos and calls to um, go over the scam with maybe a family member, or actually going and call your financial institution to do voice recognition. Things to actually that we recommend to how to avoid is to actually, we always be cautious with somebody's strange calls from your phone, right? And what I suggest in those situations, even though that you maybe don't recognize the phone, try to refrain to not say immediately a hello or who is calling, and be silent until the other person start talking. That way, you may probably, if some number you recognize and they started kind of talking, and then you feel more at ease in that particular area. Other than that is also one of avoid to um, go into your phone when you recognize that is a phone that you is unauthorized or is scam. block it from your phone device. So that way, next time that will go into your phone as spam and is being blocked on their end. Some kind of like housekeeping items from a phone address standpoint. The next one is the synthetic ID fraud, and that is huge right now. And based on the Federal Trade Commission, some of the numbers that they are getting is astronomically high, double the numbers from 2021 to 2022. And consumer are reporting a lot of synthetic identity theft. Froster can utilize your mining on the dark web, your social security, and combine date of birth, and they create an identity with those elements and put maybe their photo in a driver's license and add your social security and your date of birth. And they started to apply for a financial institution, maybe to a loan, open deposit accounts, utilizing those personal information to be able to be legitimate. It's like extremely, they call it a synthetic ID because it's very difficult to recognize and spot a driver's license. It looks very legitimate when they have their photo, and then we call it attribute, personal identification attributes added into those government's IDs, and that includes passport and other type of identity documentation. Things to actually and how to avoid and try to mitigate. Always look and monitor your credit reports, making sure you pull an annual credit report every single year. You can do that going to annualcreditreport.com, and you can pull that information and have the habit to actually go over with that information and make sure that you don't see any unusual activity on your credit report. The next one is the check fraud, and it's been recently on the news. Something that the post office has a lot of notification out there. You can go to the post office inspector general too. They have some federal cases right now. They have a lot of check fraud and mail theft that they have been seeing from so far last year. And some of the common check fraud is paper hanging. That means that they exploit the float and by intentionally writing back check and receiving goods of services before that check's bounce. That is more traditional than that what we've seen, but we still have that trending even this year. The next one is the check kiting, and that involves if the person write a back check using multiple accounts to cover amounts temporarily, and then looking at and lending to potential financial losses. It meant you will see that check bounce with multiple accounts, and that's an indication that it could be doing check kiting. The most popular last year that impacted the post office was the check washing. And criminals, what they did was to actually do use chemicals to alter the stolen checks from the post office, blue boxes, and actually changing the amount and the payee name, and then deposit those checks into their criminal accounts. And the only way some of the initial uh, claims to the financial institution and the post office was because some of the consumers look at the financial bank statement and they started noticing that the check number was indeed correct, but the payee information and the amount was completely incorrect. But and you have some indication of that washed check when you see that um, translucent or a little bit of that colored of that watermark being a little bit removed. And then the check didn't look perfectly okay. It was a little bit kind of like not being completely looking with all the elements. It kind of like looked like indeed was water, has some water mark like wet on it. And the majority of the checks that were indeed provided to from some of the federal cases that they got the criminals being prosecuted right now. The other one is the check cooking, and that was a similar case on that post office blue box case. And they went ahead instead of the check washing and then deposit physically, they actually did it digitally. That they removed the payee and the amount, and then were deposited via remote deposit captured to the criminal deposit checking or savings account. Then as I mentioned before, that check theft and forgery, when they stole those print blank checks and then started forging signatures to commit fraud. Things to avoid. Um, uh, try always go into your bank statement. And I personally, after the post office criminal investigation from last year, I have a habit with my family, including my relatives, to actually record the check and the payee name with the amount just for me to do a reconciliation later because sometimes we tend to write checks and then we tend to forget to actually okay who I forgot to what payee I added in that check and sometimes some of the victims from the post office case didn't know the check number nor the amount and the payee in some occasion and was extremely difficult to identify whether or not it was legitimate versus what was the event. The next slide. The the phone scams. That is something right now that is in increasing. We have situation when they started a random phone calls from robocalls, impersonation, and you don't know. And as I alluded before, they have that the scammer has that pause to actually mine that voice. Also, we have some phone scam right now that I have actually one today when I receive a text message with a tracking number and that I'm receiving a package with a tracking number but got lost because of the storm. And if you are not vigilant, sometimes you tend to click into that link, and that will go into that malicious IP internet connection on their website, and that can also deposit into your phone some malware. And you have to be very careful if you receive a text message saying that you have a fraud alert, you have to immediately click here to connect into your financial institution fraud department. That's a scam. We've seen a lot of an optic as well into getting in text messages to get into the one-time passcode to get access to your bank account, and that is another scam when they are sending you a one-time passcode and you are not even in conversation with your financial institution, and then you're getting that one OTP, we call it that one-time passcode, and with an icon to click there, that is another scam that we're seeing. We heavily suggest do not click there. Contact your financial institution to make sure you didn't initiate that one-time passcode from your checking or savings account. That is huge right now. It's trending everywhere. Always question that unsolicited call or message, and instead go straight to your provider. For instance, if you order something from Amazon and you get a text message or email address, email associated with the invoice or your package, go directly in the Amazon, for instance, directly to that official website or your official app and actually try to look for that message instead of clicking and accessing that email that you don't know if is legitimate or not. Medicare scam. That is something that if for a while it get a little bit not popular, and all of a sudden by the end quarter of last year, and we are seeing this year in the beginning and right now in January, a lot of Medicare scam when fraudsters go ahead and call and impersonate a Medicare representative to confirm personal information. That could include the Medicare ID number, your social security, personal information, your address, date of birth, to with the intent to update the Medicare database or perform a survey of your healthcare provider. Some of those scams are very sophisticated that they're trying with kind of act that it's a representative. You have to do it immediately or your healthcare will get shut down. You will not receive the benefit on time and you will have delays. And it's the urgency that is a red flag. In those situations, you have to be extremely careful. I recommend to actually do not provide that information and call the office immediately to actually make sure your Medicare information is okay and making sure that uh, we don't have those. You have the information and you wanted to validate. Medicaid will never call you unless it's unlikely that they will call you. But in the event, every single agency and or vendor that you are dealing in a financial institution, if they are trying to impersonate, the rule of thumb is to actually call that agency directly, call that financial institution directly, and try to follow up, making sure whether or not it's legitimate. Um, I recently had a scam to one of my family members, and they were trying to impersonate the IRS and very sophisticated. They had a portion of the tax information that they submitted, and I ended advising go ahead and call the IRS office directly and try to deep dive into that particular area and ask whether or not they contact you or not, even by sending a letter or call you. And they were able to cut the number, block the phone, and then the IRS agency representative confirmed that they didn't submit any letters and they were not it was not legitimate. So sometimes it take a little bit of time to actually kind of, okay, if I'm not 100% sure, this seems urgent, it looked like a red flag, let me pause and then avoid the situation. Next one. The technical support is another one that is been for a while, but all of a sudden is a little bit having an uptick. And we're seeing a trend when they are impersonating a like a technical support from a scrub or malware antivirus um, technical support. They will call you and say you have a subscription with X, Y, and Z vendor. We're calling to let you know that you have a malware on your PC. And because you may be probably saying, okay, I have this antivirus already subscription, he maybe had that information and then go ahead and share it. The majority, one of the red flag is that they will never call you. Another trend that we're seeing is that some of the victims, they're getting emails with logo, identical logo of that particular vendor, antivirus vendor, and telling that the subscription expired and they identify some malware and they have to update that subscription to be able to get your PC and your equipment protected with an icon on that email address to be able to click on it. Some of those are like it's a red flag, and uh, to avoid the situation, we heavily recommend that you contact that provider directly, and then making sure that your subscription is up to date and kind of follow up the same pathway on the other scams as well. Is the urgency, and to try to scare the victim that they need to act immediately. The next one is the student loan scam, and this is frightening. The fraudster, what they are doing is they are using stolen personal information like social security numbers. They go into the student loan administration and actually applying for student loan, utilizing individuals' PII information, personal information. And some of the individuals, they will not know that they have a student loan um, until they have a collection agency of a letter that they own that particular student loan amount. That's the reason we always recommend that you monitor your credit report always to make sure that you don't have you're not a victim of that particular situation. Charity fraud. And usually in Christmas time and other time of the years, you have some campaigns for charities to go over. And with that mix of legitimate charities, we will have, unfortunately, fraud on charity fraud. And scammer pretending to be a legitimate organization, they can be very sophisticated and provide a website with a lot of information. Even they have all photos and who we are, and they look extremely professional. But at the end, it's a fraud organization that is trying to defraud and pull money into across the board. We always recommend that you can, before you go into donation, making sure that go over those shorty and validate the legitimacy. And the Federal Trade Commission recommends doing a research before donating and doing an internet search through the sites like Shorty Navigator. Eddie and the team, we will be putting some of those sites for you in the chat so that way you can have it, or they may be probably at the end of the presentation shared some of that as a supporting supplemental as well. The child identity fraud is something that affect over 1 million children a year, and that is huge. I am personally, my sister was impacted when she was 11 years old. Um, and what the scammers, fraudsters do is they uh, uh, gather that social security information, again, personal information for that minor, and it's still that child identity to be able to, again, open accounts, apply for loans. And in this case, my sister's situation, that particular fraudster stole her identity to provide a synthetic ID and apply for the IRS for some refund. And they created for years, for the approximate 3 years and a half, that identity that was filing IRS refunds for that period of time. And my sister got, we were able to kind of understand what was happening when she applied for a part-time job when she was out of high school. So it is so essential that even for your children, you monitor your children's credit report and actually use extra caution when you're giving out your children's social security information. Very important. We were able to identify in my sister case that it was in a medical facility that social security and personal information got stolen, and it was a huge investigation. I really want to thank law enforcement for that effort. So it's very important. Grandparent scam. That is another one that we've seen in the past. This is not new, but it's trending up again. We have some situation when the fraudster go ahead and known as they target all the older individuals, typically senior, in they exploding their emotion and concern for the grandchildren. They can call them and say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer. Right? This is a lawyer impersonating a lawyer, saying your children are in trouble. They own X, Y, and Z money, and if you don't pay it right now, they will be in jail and get prosecuted." And that threatening is the red flag, and that sense of urgency again that is something that is those indications for that red flag. The Federal Trade Commission recommends that staying vigilant and specific for spoof calls, and never trust someone who asks for money over the phone. if you have that situation and somebody's calling that your grandchildren or any relative they are in trouble, it's just calm down, get and get the information, but be vigilant and kind of skeptical. Okay, I have to validate and verify that information in order to react and act accordingly. So always add extra pause and actually go and execute that verification and validation before you act. Next slide. I covered a little bit in the beginning on the text scam a little bit, but I just want to emphasize that is the sense of urgency. Um, to try to always verify and be skeptical. Avoid clicking links and do not share your personal information over if they are requesting that information via phone or text message, and verify the identities. Confirm going back to that if they're calling from that carrier or Amazon or bank, financial institution. Go directly with that legitimate website or call directly to the bank in credit unions to be able to validate the authenticity of that text or that phone call. Use always the official channels. Next slide. This payment app scam is a little bit skyrocketing in the holidays, but now that we are living in this digitalization, Venmo and other Zelle and other P2P payment services are everywhere, right? And with that, fraudsters are extremely agile in getting you to your scam, right? The most common payment scam for utilizing that type of scam is the accidental overpayment. Somebody will tell you, hey, a text message, email that um, they went ahead and you overpaid and you have to return that payment via Venmo or other P2P, and they will go directly and give you their personal, not the merchant website or payment method. They will redirect to you to do their own personal payment. Again, the fake fraud alert when you are telling from a bank or your financial institution, hey, you have this Venmo or Zelle or any payment app, P2P payment app, and you have to verify this a transaction, and that's and it's a fake text message to related to fraud. That's a huge red flag. You shouldn't click on that. Phishing emails or text. Hacker create a phishing email or text that look like identical to Zelle, Cash App, or Venmo and prompt you to click there and sign into your account to verify the information that is, and they will go into and get your information stolen to be able to access that payment application. How to stay safe? Treat an online transaction like cash. Be vigilant and do not use payment apps for online transactions with strangers. When you get a message that look like it's coming from an official app, go directly into that official um, application, not what you've seen in that email or text message. The next one is the most popular of that holiday season so far, and that is trending, but was a little bit in an optic. And during the holidays, is the Amazon imposter. You will get some phishing emails. I got actually in the beginning of November got a fraud text message from Amazon. It was fake. They will put you that you have to it has an issue in your app and your online account, and you have to validate credentials. Some of the trends also is to let you know that you have a some I mean invoice or a item that you purchase, and it is not you. You have to click on that email to validate and verify that was you. Be careful on those. I we recommend you go straight to that official, back to the official app and validate directly. You, fraudsters, what they're doing is the email look extremely identical of that Amazon email that you get when you get confirmation when you purchase something within that Amazon application, with a couple of things that are off, but it looks extremely identical. So look for those. Pause first and then go straight to the official website to be able to validate and making sure that is legitimate. Next slide. And we talk about how to spot a scammer. And again, we cannot reiterate that having a strong sense of urgency, that's one of the red flags. Threat or scare tactics, that's another one. um Stories of excuses, right? When you kind of like going in those conversations, call or messages from authorities like a government agency or legitimate businesses, but it doesn't look like why they're calling me, right? Asking for sensitive information. I can now emphasize that particular red flag. And if I can do this and put it in a scorecard for my family, put it in the refrigerator, that would be great, because sometimes we have to, including myself, to remind us that how important it is to safeguard your personal information. And when people are asking for your sensitive information as your PII, it is so essential. Is that's a red flag, right? And sometimes I go to the places, even physically to a store, and they ask me for my date of birth. I immediately ask why you need that information. Is something that you need? That's personal, right? It's the tendency of say this is personal. I don't want to share it. Um, the next one is insisting on non-traditional payment methods. If we have our established transaction methods, when they want to deviate, that's a red flag. Next one. And how can you avoid a scam? Again, be skeptical when someone contacts you. Even when we get sometimes distracted, and sometimes I get calls from the IRS and say, wait a minute, let me call you back, right? I want to make sure I can validate this. Don't share personal information. Don't click on no links. Be careful with your phone, and enable the multi-factor authentication. That's crucial as well. The ability to have extra layers when you're accessing your account as well. How to avoid scam? eh, In make sure you have some of the identity theft protection software and update regularly. There are some products out there that you can look for screen in your phone, your devices. Before you go over those providers, make sure you feel comfortable selecting those, but it's something that you can actually look. Use strong password. I always suggest to actually change your password constantly. Maybe once in a while you want to refresh all your password and kind of keep it updated. Um, Monitor your financial statement. It is so essential that you go into and monitor your bank statement because you don't want to make sure that every single transaction are correct, complete, and are all correct, and you don't have an unauthorized transaction. We have a very strong monitoring tool on our online banking that you can actually go over and lock your credit card, and set up some alerts that if a transaction go over a certain amount, you can get alerted by email or text, and that way you can monitor better using technology. It is really good in our online banking platform. Read a personal document. That's essential too. That's part of that process to make sure that data, your personal information is not everywhere, and you keep it all clean and not being exposed. Protect your social security number and avoid using public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi is not secure and can open that door of that uh, person that can access your devices and actually get into your system as well. And it's important that you use a secure Wi-Fi always. Is highly recommended. Next slide. Research companies before taking any action. Don't refund or forward overpayment. That's on that P2P payment. Look for suspicious payment requirements and create a family password. Educate yourself as you are here tonight with us. The next one. And what to do if you fall into a scam. Report suspicious account activity to us immediately. You can call us to member services at 800-374-2758. You can also do a secure messaging through myussfcu.org. Log in to myussfcu.org to verify account transaction always 24/7, and check ussfcu.org for fraud notification. And if you have fallen to victim to a scam and you have some of those scam in your as a victim in some of the occasion, hopefully never. But in this situation that I share with you today, you can report fraud to the Federal Trade Commission. In those situations that I share with you today about the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, those are the check fraud that I alluded to, and your state attorney general, and report fraud for those situations. You have to go into the file a police report to be able to record what was the fraud incident, and that way that can you will be able to go over that process in the event you have that particular situation. The next slide. The car management, that is something that I mentioned a little bit. Some of the functionalities that we have online, you can turn your car on and off if you're maybe going into vacation or you don't want to use that particular cash. You have the ability within our online application to turn on and off, which is very nice. Report a loss in stolen cars, set up some alert and restriction. That is huge. That's something that you can actually buy transaction time by retailer, dollar amount, and you can have those combinations and receive via app, text, or email that type of notification. If, for instance, you have a high, like a large withdrawal, or actually going into a specific amount that you set up in your credit card, you will get that notification, and that is a very good monitoring type and for your car management. And that concludes our webinar today, and I will open for Q&A. Thank you.
Sue, thank you very much for that great presentation. Thank you everybody that's still joining us in the webinar. That was such great information, and we can conclude that if you can see, the fraudsters do not take a break. They try to attack you from different channels, different ways. It can be a call, it can be a text message, even using your own debit card. But that's the reason why we want to make sure that we emphasize here at the United States and the Federal Credit Union. We care about your security as a member. We want to make sure that you don't fall, victim of these, tactics per se. And then that's the reason why we have all these, measurements, and we have all these mechanisms for you to feel secure and protected as our members. So with that being said, once again, Sue, you are so great at what you do. You know all about risk management and things like that. So thank you very much. With that being said, I also wanted, before going into the questions, I wanted to give a special shout out to Mr. Stan Wong. He's one of our regulars as well. So, Mr. Wong, we're so happy that you're here. And, when it comes to technology and IT, I know that we're talking your language, so thank you very much for being here with us. With that being said, we have our first question of the evening. And the question goes, and anybody can answer. If a fraudulent check has been cashed, how can the credit union help the account holder? What is the recourse to the account holder? Thanks. So basically, if somebody gets a fraudulent check and it has been cashed, what's the process for that member to recover their money? Anybody?
Wow. So first of all, you have here you have a process to be able to. First, you have to notify about that particular check to us, and you can utilize the channels that I described it to you. You can call us, or you can utilize the chat and or send notification to us to be able for us to investigate and kind of work with you on that fraudulent check into that process. We will open a fraud investigation to identify the fraudulent check, and go over that process with the Federal Reserve and get communicated back to you and with that fraud investigation.
All
And
right.
part of it as well is to actually send an affidavit of forgery, and then we will be able to process the fraud case. That is a good question.
That was a great question. It gets you thinking, like, because sometimes people, they have doubts, like, how do I start the process? What should I do? Should I wait to clear my account or anything like that? As soon as you see something hitting your account, notify us, because that's why we have this process to make sure that you are, as the member, you are protected and secure. So, Sue, great tips, great information as well. Andrea, do you have any questions on your end?
What specific safeguards are in place to guard against the account fraud, such as a criminal trying to gain access?
A good question. So we have uh, one of the areas that we are working in is all across the financial industry is that we have a way internally in each financial institution go over and do a monitoring your activity and trying to uh, confirm. For instance, you maybe probably received in the past a phone call from our credit card and making sure is that are you did you initiate that transaction and try to validate was you. You will be able to receive those, and it's kind of tricky because we're telling you today, do not make sure you contact your financial institution, contact us for making sure this legitimate. But those those are the areas that you will see that we are monitoring, making sure that that's an example, that all of a sudden we're seeing a spike in transaction and it's very abnormal, and we will be, um, you will probably receive communication back to from us to you to make sure it was you that initiated your transaction. That's an example. And we heavily encourage you to contact us back, as Eddie alluded to, making sure that we can assist you and validate that particular transaction, that particular account information with you in the event we have those situations.
Something I really like that Sue mentioned is that you should contact us. So let's say, for example, one day you get a email that looks a little funky to you, or a text message, or even a call, make sure that you call us directly at 800 number I put in on the chat, which is 800-374-2758, and just contact us directly. Like, hey, I got this, email from Kerry Lazar. Like, is this legitimate? Like, the name might sound a little fraud, but if it's Kerry Lazar, as you can see, she works with us. But, you can give us a call, and then our great call center representatives, they're so knowledgeable, they have all this information, and they're informed of all the emails that go out from the marketing department or from the credit union overall. So if you have doubts or anything, contact us directly, and just question it, like, hey, I got this email, is this legitimate? We just want to make sure that you do, as the member, you also got to do your due diligence to make sure that you are, looking at the email. You make sure that you contact us directly to make sure is legitimate. And then if it looks something off, if something tells you like, hey, this looks, it looks off. So just make sure that you contact us as well. Don't ever forget that. Andrea, while we go to another question, Carrie, I think Mr. Wong wants to come off mute to give us some tips on security. So I don't know if you want to give him privileges while we go to the other question. Is that cool? Perfect. All right. So the question, Sue, is I frequently forward fraudulent emails to spoof@paypal.com. Should I also copy USSFCU at the same time?
It doesn't hurt if you are already sending those to a particular vendor or provider. Just it doesn't hurt for us to get notification as well. And in the event that will help as well in the event we have a fraud investigation for a particular identified transaction, it will not hurt.
Perfect. And then
Absolutely.
I think the more we're informed, the more we can protect you, because that way we are aware of like, okay, like there might be some potential fraud. We can put like a no in the Missouri's called the because she might see some fraud. So protected. The fraud might have not happened yet, but yet you can always prevent it before it happens as well. We want to make sure that we catch it. We don't want to catch it after it happens. But even if after it happens, we always have these procedures that will keep you protected. Another question is any tips for managing passcodes for my online banking accounts? I have all my passcodes and accounts for banking written down and stored in a secure place in my home. Is there a better system for my passwords? So Sue, what would you recommend based on your experience for people that have so many passwords like Facebook and Instagram, their work and things like that? So what can they do for them to protect their passwords?
I mean, I cannot advise you on what would be a good tool. There are some uh, tools out there, technology-wise, that will help you manage your a plethora of your password. But I mean, you have to do your own due diligence, making sure that you feel comfortable to select the right tool for you, and you understand like the what is entailed to be able to utilize that system. But definitely, there are some popular ones out there that help you manage your password.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And once again, we want to emphasize that we're here to protect you, but also as the member, you have to do due diligence. And then whatever, everybody has a different mechanism for passwords. What Kerry uses is probably might be different from what Andrea uses it, and from what Andrea is using is different from Kim as well. So just make sure that you find something you're very comfortable with. That's something that you can trust. And then I know that in this day and time, we have passwords for literally everything, our phones, car nowadays with these electric cars and things like that. Carrie can tell you she got an electric car as a rental a few months back, and she had to figure out all these passwords and things like that. Before we move forward, we want to have our special guest of the evening, Mr. Stan Won. Please take it away and share your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Eduardo. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. So I'm just adding a few comments. So very nice presentation so far. I learned a lot of new things too. I don't deal with checks as much, but you can never say that there's nothing that you don't already know. So it was very helpful. A couple things that helped me for mobile banking, and you guys all mentioned about text messages. So when you do the OTP, where you get a password on your phone, if you know you're going into a place that's going to send you that text message, go ahead and save that under your existing contacts. Because I find that when I get those, I recognize them. I don't have to guess where they're coming from. Now, sometimes you'll get a different password, which doesn't make any sense where you got it from. But if you know you're signing into a website and you got that one-time password connection, just add it to your list. So, because I do online banking daily, and for me, it's easier to recognize that rather than looking at a bunch of numbers. Because every time you look at your text message, you're like, what is that one from? What is that one from? And so, if you start getting them, just store them in your existing contact. If you don't recognize it, don't add it. Another tip too, you guys briefly just talked about it a few minutes ago about passwords. Like everything else, everything, we're all connected. There's unfortunately, we're only as good as the passwords we pick. And obviously we don't want to use things that are simple, easy to remember because they're convenient. What I would recommend is look for a good password like was suggested before. I will say, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody, but LastPass was hacked 3 times in the last 3 years. So I would avoid that one because I was with them and I said, after the first one, LastPass got hacked again. Then a third time. And I said, after the first time, I said, you just got to read your reviews, do the research on the internet. And there's some that are pretty good out there. You'll read like Bitwarden, 1Pass, and things like that. So do your due diligence. That's what I would recommend. And back up your passwords often. And like anything else, don't make them simple. Most of my username and passwords are at least 12 to 18 characters. I don't try to remember them. But on the other hand, I let this password manager pick words for me that just make no sense, but I don't have to remember them. So I have close to 300 passwords in my password manager file. So it tells you how many things that I have to manage, but I make sure I keep tabs on them all times, make sure they're being changed, updated, and everything else, and so forth. Another question too that's helpful for you guys. Because I bank with different banks as well too, and I believe the United States Federal Credit Union does too. I banked with Ally about 10 years ago, and they did something that no one else did. They let you pick your own security questions. The banks you bank with often ask them, instead of choosing the default questions, ask to create your own personal ones. And that's what I did too. I went and asked them, can you take that? And so like one of the banks I bank with has the default 3. And I said, can I add 2 more? And they let me add 2 more personal. So I said, ask me a question about what the color of my SUV is inside and outside. So that's 2 questions. You see what I'm saying? So again, another tip to ask all your banks if they allow you to add additional security questions, because that'll make it that much harder. If that person doesn't know it, then they're not going to get past that point. Let's see what else I had on here. Yeah, those were the main ones because obviously you guys covered a lot of things, but it's just like anything else, just use common sense. And like anything else, banks unfortunately aren't always it's sometimes out of their control because bad actors get in. Because I had one bank that was unfortunately hacked. They sent me, what was it, the paperwork to tell me it had been hacked and just be aware of it. And they offered a year of credit monitoring through check systems. I think it's called Alert One. So just know that banks try to do their thing too, but sometimes you as the end user got to make sure you log off your screens properly, make sure that people can't find information. So it's just a good habit to do as much banking at your home and not outside of the public. I know sometimes you can't, but those are things that you can do to add additional security to your mobile banking experience as well. And again, picking not easy passwords. We're all just trying to secure it, and the more we can make it more secure, I think we'll all sleep better at night. So that was just my few comments for today. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak.
Mrs. Stan, you always killing it, to be honest with you. You're always giving us the knowledge. I always thought about doing that, choosing my own question, but then I was like, you know what? It's just easier to pick from the drop list. But I think the fact that you emphasize like you can make it a two-part question, that's very important because, if it's very specific to you, only you know the answer to that. And it's going to be hard for Froster to say like, what can the answer be to this, So that's a great tip, actually. I never tried that. I'm gonna start using that going forward. And then I just wanted to emphasize that you're saying, banks do, we do what we can to protect our members, and that's the reason why we do presentations like this, and we have all these implementations and systems to protect everybody. Also, I just wanted to emphasize, and anybody on the panel list can agree with me, or they can vouch for me, that the United States and the Federal Credit Union will never call you directly out of the random just to ask you like, hey, what was your first pet's name, or what was your date of birth, or what's your social security, or Miss Kim Fritley, like what dress color are you wearing today? Like, we will never ask you none of those direct questions. The only way we're gonna ask you specific questions is if you're doing a loan, or if you're doing some type of transaction with us. But even then, we're gonna be very secure about that. You're gonna go through the authentication process, so we make sure that the other person on the other line is you. But best believe that our credit union will never contact you directly for any information. Like, we will never send you a text message saying, Ms. Lazar, what did you eat today for breakfast, or something like that. We will never answer those questions. So panelists, I don't know if anybody else wants to add to Mr. Stan. Thank you very much once again for that great tip that you gave us.
You're welcome.
I always like to suggest adding my number to the do not call registry. So do not call.gov is always a nice little added layer. That way, I mean, if you do get contacted by phone by somebody, you can most likely bet that they are a scammer because they're not following those federal government mandated phone and sales procedures. I always like that one.
Also, I wanted to emphasize that Mr. Ken Lucas earlier was telling us a story about his friend that they saw a pop-up on their computer, and the computer said like, hey, tech support, like, please call this number because you might be getting attacked for a virus or whatever the case might be. Just make sure that if you get like a pop-up on your screen or anything like that, please do not call the number that you see right in front of you. Just make sure you can use your phone on another device, go to Google, and then make sure you go to the official website of that apparently company that wants to contact you. And that's the reason why I say that if you get any information from us, call that 800 number to make sure that it's us that's sending it. So if you get a notification or anything like that, please don't ever call the number that's being given to you, because most likely that number is going to direct you to not Microsoft, but rather it's going to be a fraudster company that's going to pretend to be, like Mr. Stan was saying, bad actors, and trying to pretend that, oh, they're the legitimate, they're there for you. And imagine this started with a problem that it was going to cause Mr. Lucas' friend $19.95, and then she ended up losing $200,000. That's a lot of money to lose, and just to emphasize, you as a member are protected up to $250,000. Correct, Kim? Is that correct? Thumbs up? Yes, that is correct. Exactly. So, you're very protected in all these, whatever products that you have and services, we have some type of protection for you. So please, please be confident that we are doing our due diligence to be ahead of the game, beat these fraudsters because they don't sleep. So if they don't sleep, we're not sleeping either. So I just want to, emphasize that we're protecting you as well. Um, Go ahead, Mr. Stan. He
Oh,
has
okay,
another
sure.
tip as well.
One other thing too that I want to suggest too, if everything, most of you should all subscribe to the 3 credit bureaus: TransUnion, Equifax, and I know there's 2 EQs. I get them mixed up every now and then.
Experian.
Experian, that's right. Okay. So I would always suggest sign up for them. They're all free. Now, most of them even make it easier where you can freeze and unfreeze your own credit for a certain time period. You can say closed at this date, open at this date, and lock it down. I would suggest, unless you're applying for credit, keep it closed at all times. Just that's one less thing you have to worry about someone trying to get it. And just sign up for them because obviously I get notices every time I open up a new credit card application, and I go in and I verify those things and say, yes, it was me, so that there's no question about it. And sometimes some report to you sooner that they got notification of credit cards when you apply for them. Some take 2 months. So just always be on the leery that they don't always come at the same time. So I just wanted to add that one tip as well too, to lock your credit, because it's the most important thing that you can do to keep things secure. So just another little tip in case I think it might have been covered in one of your meetings before, but it just came to my mind just now because I was just checking mine. And it's good just to check it at least, once every 4 to 6 weeks, even just to make sure. So
Yeah, they just passed a law that you're now available to check it, or can check it once a week for free from the 3 credit bureaus indefinitely now.
Right.
So that cap's not going to go anywhere. Check it for Christmas, check it for Thanksgiving, check it
For your
exactly.
birthday, everything,
and your birthday. Celebrate by checking your credit score.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Great tip, Mr. Stan. Thank you very much. Like he was emphasizing, please check your credit, check your accounts. Just check everything that you have under your name just to make sure everything looks right. There's nothing, a little bit sketchy about it. But just make sure that you also set up those alerts. Like, for example, with the debit cards and credit cards that we have here at the United States and Federal Credit Union, make sure that you set up those alerts. Like if it's something, let's say more than $200 or whatever amount that you want, get the alert so that way we can you can approve the transaction, or if it is a higher amount, because we just want to make sure that our members are they're aware of the things that they can do with their accounts here with us, and they're protected as well.
And
Mr.
just
Stan?
just
Yeah,
a
go
side
ahead.
note, United States Federal Credit Union did catch for me about 3 months ago a debit charge, which I didn't even know anything about it. So they contacted me ahead of time, and I said, nope, I didn't use it. And so that was good. That means they were on the, checking out. So that's just a sign of they're on top of their game. So I was very thankful that they had caught that from me. So obviously requested a new card, closed it, and everything else. So I think it was some other company that came, but they do it on your behalf, on your third party, if I recall. Just don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a thing that was taken care of. And then I knew there was one other last thing, but I just bring them up as we have these meetings. It just, I just always feel like there's something else that I think, oh, I know. And you guys mentioned it earlier too. If you start getting calls from a lot of places that you don't want, it's good to block those if you can. You can't always block them all, but it just helps, and it all depends on the ISP too. I used to have an account with Verizon. Unfortunately, Verizon's a good company, but they don't do a very good job at blocking. I'm with T-Mobile now, and I probably get 5% of what I used to get compared to what Verizon used to. So sometimes you might have to switch carrier or get a new phone number if it gets to be too bad. So that's just another suggestion if it gets to be bad, because your phone notification on your mobile app is very important that your number be as secure as possible. So it's just something to keep an eye and alert out for.
So many things to do, so many fraud that's going on.
It's a
But
full-time job.
it is a
Trust me.
full-time, 100%. Like I say, fraudsters don't sleep, and that's the reason why we want to
Right.
make sure that we stay alert and aware of what's going on as well. So yeah, it's a full-time job, like you're saying, Mr. Stan. With that
Correct.
being said, thank you for everybody that's still with us. I know we schedule these, webinars until 7 p.m. It's 7:15 now, 6:15 where Carrie is, of course. But if we don't have any more questions or any comments, we just want to say
One
thank you.
more.
Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
Sorry. Should you change your username also if you think you've been scammed?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Oh, I think you should. Yeah, obviously change your user ID and everything else. Because when LastPass had gotten my information, just to be, I said I'm creating all usernames, all user ID. Because if somebody still has your username, they don't know your password because maybe they don't have it. I just start from scratch. It took me 3 months to redo every password. Probably spent 2 hours every night for 3 months to redo every account. It was a nightmare, but at the end of the day, I slept. But you start with the highest priority ones first, your banking ones first, lock those down, and then slowly work to the ones that aren't as important. So definitely change your username and password. I highly recommend doing that. That's just one more thing to make it harder, because the last thing you want to do is still think that you got something out there. And make sure you back up that data too if it's in the cloud, because the last thing you want to do is lose your password file and not have it. So I think I did it similar to like one of the other persons, kept it on a spreadsheet, but after a while it got too hard to maintain on a spreadsheet. Even though my spreadsheet was password protected and everything else on an encrypted hard drive, I still felt it's just getting too hard to maintain. So just have to find one that really worked for you. I don't want to recommend one, because if something goes bad, then somebody will. So there's enough research out there that people can find out there that they'll know the top 3, and from there, I think they can make their decisions based on that.
Mr. Wong, I have a question for you. So how much faith do you put behind password generators, though? Is that okay to use any free one, or like should you also use caution when using a generator for all these passwords? Because they are really helpful finding a generator. So
they're hard, but I think the toughest thing is, like anything else, is trying to find one that you feel comfortable with, because sometimes the password generators can make it very difficult for you to use. But then, like anything else, obviously, if you're good at doing copy and pasting into these, sometimes you can not get the whole password copied correctly and paste it in, so you'll sometimes get frustrated and so forth. So a lot of them do fill in for you. If you don't, again, this is just general information. If you have probably less than 50 passwords, I would say you're probably okay with a free. I have over 300, and I needed something which I was willing to pay. Just managed to do that. And obviously you can share accounts among other family members to get a discount too, like with my wife and son, but they don't really use it as much as I try to practice what I preach to them. They don't always follow you. It's just because it's directly from me. But again, I'm no security expert. I'm just using best practices, what I think in my environment at work. And obviously, I'm no expert there either too, but I just feel like if I'm going to practice security at work, I'm going to practice as much in my personal life. And I think you should treat it that way also too. There is one question for the other person that was speaking earlier. Maybe she knows the question of this. Every now and then I do get an email that says your name was spotted on the dark web. The only thing I do is when I see something like that, I change my password immediately just to be safe. There's nothing I can do because it's already been exposed out there. So I don't know if the person who was speaking earlier can speak along when you see things that are posted and said your name was found out or on dark web. Because here's one thing that I was really concerned about. There are places that say they will remove your password and things like that. And I don't fully agree with them. I'll tell you why. Discover is one that's very common, pushing out password security, where they say, we'll clean up your files and everything else. And so they did a free trial for me for 10 days. And obviously my name got out there, and I said, until I agreed to letting you guys go out and clean out what you thought was on the dark web, I didn't even get as much junk mail. So obviously sometimes when you're writing to these people to remove your name from the list, you actually, what should I say? You now ensure them that my name is a valid name out there. So I have mixed feelings about that. You know what I'm saying? If I'm going to pay someone to clean it, how do I know that the other party's going to agree to it? They may not agree to it, but now they got a confirmation of my email as a valid email. So I have mixed reviews on those. The ones that, so I don't subscribe to any of those that say they'll clean it up for you, because once I did that and I notified Discover, I said, you guys, I never had that problem. As soon as I authorized you to do it, I started getting a bunch of spam mail. So, but that's just me. Again, I'm not saying it works or doesn't work. That's my own personal opinion.
sounds like they sold their list of contacts.
So, but anyways, yeah, I didn't know if anybody else had any comments about the dark web.
Yes, Sue, do you have any comments about the dark web and what Mr. Wong just spoke of?
She lost
I think
connection.
Sue
I
left.
think she, yeah, I think she
Oh,
lost.
she
it.
might
Oh,
drop
okay.
off.
It was
Okay, I'm
happening.
sorry. I mean,
No,
it's
no,
it's
no,
still
no
ear-
worries.
it's still early here. It's only 4:20 in the
I
afternoon.
know. I was
so-
gonna say, Eddie, when you said it's 6:30, 5:30, 6:30 in Illinois, it's even earlier where they are.
For
It's only
Mr.
4.
Stan and Mr. Stan, no, we appreciate you for making that comment, Mr. Stan. It's
All right.
something to think about, and like you were saying, and we keep emphasizing on our end as well. Everybody needs to do the due diligence, see what works for you, do your research, and see what's the best method for you. Because everybody has their unique method to, just how you do your finances differently from everybody, you do your security differently from everybody. But with that being said, I just want to mention that next week's webinar will be Beyond Branches, your credit union anytime, anywhere. And this is the first time we're going to have 2 presentations in one day, one at 3 p.m. and one at 6 p.m. So cross your fingers, wish us luck. We're trying something new, so we want to make sure it works. And then for next week, we're probably going to hear Mr. Stan's testimony and Mr. Ken Lucas as well, because you might be like, beyond branches, what if I don't live in the DMV area, which is where we're located, well, Mr. Stan lives in California and Mr. Ken Lucas lives in California as well. So that's the topic for next week. Carrie, Andrea, Kim, you were all amazing this evening. Thank you very much for all the support. Thank you for everything and the knowledge that you have. Sue, she's not here, but she's going to look at the recording. So Sue, we appreciate you for doing the presentation as well. Mr. Ken, thank you for all the comments that you made. You're always very active on the chat. Mr. Stan, thank you very much for coming on mute for 2 weeks in a row. And we appreciate that so much, because this is the reason why we do it. Without any of the attendees, this wouldn't be possible. We do this for you all, and then we emphasize the topics a lot, because what we preach is what we're practicing, even if on our own personal lives. So with that being said, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week in the same channel at the same time.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.